Warning! The following program contains subject matter pertaining to subjects of varying degrees of mattering.
You've all been warned.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Tark Talks, the show that I put out nearly every month where we just take a look at some niche news and I give some commentary on it. First off, 3 of you may have noticed that I didn't actually put one of these videos out last month. Well, I did say that I wouldn't make these videos if I didn't find there was much interesting to comment on, and last month, I didn't really find that much too interesting, but more importantly, I was up to my eyeballs in Trails of Cold Steel 3, and that definitely took precedence. On that note, this is our first order of business. Trails of Cold Steel 3 did come out, and the much worried over translation by NIS America proved that our concerns, though reasonably founded, ultimately lived up to very little in the end. The translation is pretty a-okay. Unfortunately, other issues did arise, but they thankfully don't have anything to do with the quality of the game. This mainly pertains to the game's distribution. Some lucky players had received their orders, both standard and collector's editions, over a week in advance, and gameplay footage started flooding the net pretty fast. So watch out for those thumbnails from Let's Players and highlight channels that like to spoil everything without so much as a warning. So we did have some players that got the game early, but other players weren't so lucky. Some of them have been waiting over a week past release for their orders to arrive. Even my copy that I ordered in store ended up delayed. I wasn't waiting long personally, I have got my copy by now, but other people, they're just not as lucky. At the end of it all, though, we are Kiseki fans, and if there's anything we're used to, it's waiting. A couple extra days or a week won't kill any of us, but yeah, it does kinda suck feeling left behind, so hopefully all those unfulfilled orders get addressed soon. Otherwise, the game is out now, and if you don't have it, I'd highly recommend you go pick it up. In other Legend of Heroes related news, we got 2 interesting pieces of information. The first is very exciting, though I don't feel we're too likely to get much out of it. Apparently, Falcom has a strong interest in bringing the crossspell arc of the series to the West. This is, of course, provided they can find a good partner who's willing to do it. Given the high cost to translate, the likelihood of the translation being imperfect, and sales being incredibly unlikely for what's kind of a legacy title at this point, it might not go anywhere, but if you've ever seen Dumb and Dumber, you know what this means at the end of the day.
So you're telling me there's a chance?
The second piece of news kind of scares me a bit. The Kiseki games are rumored to keep going for another 20 years. And if these 20 years are all still part of the same ongoing narrative, I'm not really on board for that. 5 years? Sure. 10? Stretching it, but I'll bite. 20? Nah. Plot points cannot go on for that long. It's already getting to the point where the story is getting a little away from itself in some places, and from what I hear about Cold Steel 4, there's a chance that we may be hitting a major narrative roadblock. If Kiseki ends soon, I would like to see roughly 6 more games. 2 for Calvard, 2 for Northumbria, and 2 for Remiferia. I would spring for a 7th that brings the whole world into one game, but I wouldn't want to see more than that. I just can't fight the feeling that by the time I'm pushing 50 years old, I'd feel the games had played themselves out and the story more than run its course. If this 20-year plan involves ending this narrative somewhere in the middle and starting a new one, I won't have any issue with that. But if it's still the same ongoing story, I worry about its ability to balance itself and keep quality. But enough about the Legend of Heroes, let's move on. A while back, I reviewed a visual novel on PC called Heart of the Woods, from some of the same creators as Highway Blossoms. I was rather fond of it. Unfortunately, skipping last month's Tark Talks means I can't be of personal benefit to this next story, but for those interested, it recently had a crowdfunding campaign for a number of things. The 2 most notable things here is that the game will finally be getting voiced, and that a Nintendo Switch digital version is underway with a physical release being highly likely shortly after. The campaign fell just shy of the physical Switch goal, but they are in talks with publishers to secure a small print run. So if this is something you're interested in, keep your eyes peeled as this little quality title will definitely go fast and will very much become a rarity shortly after its release. Moving on, we have a new release coming from Limited Run Games, and like that company or hate it, this is a release that we desperately needed. Mary Skelter Nightmare 2 on the Nintendo Switch is going up for pre-order on November 26th. There won't be a mad dash to buy the game at some specific time, but you'll have to make sure you get your order in before the order window closes. The print size of this game will be done based on the amount of copies ordered. Anybody who wants a copy now should be able to get one, though once the pre-order window closes, that is it. The physical release of this game was of course up in the air, as the sales for the first game in North America weren't very strong. This now has led it to go for large sums of money in the aftermarket. In Japan, the sales of the second game faltered pretty strongly after they abandoned the Vita and the game released to mediocre reviews, so no physical version was ever planned for an international release. I, for one, am very happy to see that it is indeed coming, and with it comes a chance to get Mary Skelter 1 physically without breaking the bank. Yes, that is correct. Mary Skelter Nightmare 2 will include a full version of the first game on cartridge, and it won't run you over $100 to get. Moving right along, with the upcoming release of Death Stranding, the review embargo has lifted, and it seems that it wasn't just people who haven't played the game struggling to really figure the game out. Although reviews are mostly favorable, there is a lot of language around the game having long moments of tedium and lacking in fun. This is causing the game to be very divisive, with some claiming that if the game's not fun, then it's bound to be complete trash and fails at being a game.
If it's not fun, why bother?
I don't share this perspective at all, but I won't fault those who do. We all game for different reasons. Personally, I think what games are capable of has broadened significantly since 1985, and that we don't need to cram them into a tiny box of preconceived notions of what games are meant to be. With more and more games developing film-like qualities while still being interactive experiences, it makes sense that what value games can provide goes well beyond that tiny box we used to envision them in. Some of my all-time favorite movies are anything but fun, yet they are still significantly engaging and leave lasting and transcendent impressions on me. Movies like The Road I would never describe as being fun. If Death Stranding lacks in fun but still remains engaging, I think it'll be something I'm interested in. I've never viewed Kojima as the god some other folks do, and I'm still backlogged on Metal Gear Solid games, having not even played past 3 yet. But the fact that this game is coming as so challenging to people has got me more interested than I ever was before. But then I also really like movies like Mother, which was met with a variety of different opinions, from deep philosophical masterpiece to shallow pretentious movie that's not as smart as it thinks it is and doesn't have much beneath its shiny paint. So take that however you want. Now, in smaller news, since I missed last month's Tark Talks, we have a number of games to shout out here. As mentioned before, Trails of Cold Steel 3 released on PS4, and it's definitely a must-buy. We also have the second volume of the Spirit Hunter series, NG, the follow-up to the fantastic Deathmark. Code Vein released to fairly good reception, though word is still out on its sales. Luigi's Mansion dropped on the Switch at the very end of the month. The digital version of Yakuza 4 HD Remaster is now available for purchase. And of course, we have Atelier Thyza. Really hoping to get a chance to look at that one, but I am unfortunately really tied up right now. For November, we have a few games coming out, most notably, of course, Death Stranding. But we also have Pokemon Sword and Shield, which I'm probably gonna pass up to secretly play an EA game for myself. Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. I can't really help it that much. I am a Star Wars junkie. For all the crap it's got shoveled into it, I still love Star Wars, and Fallen Order is looking rather promising. For channels this month, I want to share out a little haven of mine on YouTube. Possibly one of the simplest channels you'll ever see me recommend. This is Mama Micah. Her channel is almost entirely unboxing videos on just regular edition games. Half the time there's not even anything extra in the cases beyond the disc itself. But there is just a really charming and infectious quality to her enthusiasm for all the games she buys. I came across her a couple years ago because of her unboxing of Hakuoki Kyoto Winds, and I've been a fan ever since. This channel doesn't need any glitz and glam, just our host Mama Micah, her smile, and her enthusiasm. I'll leave a link to her channel in the description below. Getting back into the big news, protests in Hong Kong continue as citizens push back against China's assimilation of their country. I would get deeper into this, but it's a bit of a rabbit hole, and I highly suggest you all look into it if world politics concern you at all. We are bringing this up today because these protests have spilled over into America, and rightfully so. What we've seen as a result is company after company quaking in their boots, afraid to say what they feel, and punished if they do, because many of these companies have Chinese investors lining their pockets. We've seen this happening in many sports circles first, but we recently seen it in full display from Blizzard. Blizzard essentially canceling many of their prolific gamers, but preventing others from canceling themselves from Blizzard's subscriptions.
Do you guys want half?
Human rights? Blizzcon took place over the weekend where they announced a couple interesting things. Overwatch 2, more like Overcrotch 2. Got him. And Diablo 4, which looks okay. But of course this all happened while they were being protested just outside by people in Winnie the Pooh costumes. Yes, there's a reason for the costumes, but no, I'm not going to cover it that deep. Other people outside used Blizzard's idiocy to profit, selling merch commemorating the moment. It's not often I get involved in political things or comment on them in any way on my channel, but I stand with Hong Kong and those who speak out against Blizzard for their actions. Hong Kong deserves its sovereignty. Now, there was definitely more that I wanted to share opinions on from the last 2 months, but I don't really aim to keep people around for 20 minutes in a video like this. So the last thing I want to address is a channel update of sorts, or rather a community update. Sometime this month I will be suspending my Patreon account. Provided, of course, there's a way I can prevent payments from being made without fully shutting down my account and getting stuck into Patreon's new dumb terms of service. Thing is, I started Patreon when I became unemployed. I done this to keep the channel going. While this was happening, I was able to put out roughly 4 to 5 videos every month and keep on top of what I promised. This was the highest output schedule I had ever had. When I got my job back, I managed to keep this up only because my wife had become unemployed and was able to help with the workload. Well, we are both back to working now, and with this, 2 things have changed. Between our 2 incomes and what YouTube pays in AdSense, I am able to keep the channel sustained. However, what I can't do is upkeep the upload frequency, as we are both too busy now. Because money is no longer what's needed, it makes sense to suspend the Patreon. What I need is time. Most of you were just there to support me and show gratitude, but I made promises with that Patreon, and with the schedule I have now and with holiday seasons fast approaching, I worry that I won't be able to fulfill those. Because of that, I simply can't accept the money anymore. That money was meant to pay for something I don't know if I can deliver, so it seems best to me to just not let any of you down and rescind the service for the time being. I greatly appreciate all you've done, and you really have kept the channel alive over the past year and a half. And I hope you don't feel that your investment has gone to waste. The channel will continue, of course, but uploads will be more sporadic. I announced that I was probably planning on doing this in my Discord a couple weeks back, and a Patreon or 2 over there stated that if I shut down my Patreon, they will redistribute the money to other creators they think are in need. You're all good people. I would love nothing more than to see this happen and to see that money end up where it's truly needed. There is definitely no shortage of small creators who need that money to keep going, just as I did at one point. So in closing this, I'd like to say one last big thank you, all of you. The people who supported me on Patreon and the folks who just show up here to watch the show because you like it or you find it useful. Whatever you're here for, thank you. It has been a huge help over the past year and a half. And with that, we got one more order of business. One final question from Patreon. This was requested to be a whole video, but I just can't see a whole video made out of it, so I'll keep it kind of brief. Prince wanted to know what my favorite and least favorite protagonists in RPGs are. This is definitely tough because there's no real character type I exactly drift to. The best protagonists I feel are the ones who just fit into their world in a believable way. In this, Estelle and Joshua from Trails in the Sky are probably the best. However, some of my favorite characters are characters like Kiryu Kazuma from the Yakuza series, which isn't exactly a straight RPG. So the closest I can think of in an RPG to this kind of moral, reserved, and conflicted character with good old-fashioned family values is probably Kaim from Lost Odyssey. On a personal and kind of nostalgic note though, Vivi from Final Fantasy IX has always held a soft spot in my heart. I remember my buddy playing this game when I was in elementary school. He had names for all the characters pulled from our circle of friends. I was always the smallest guy in class, so of course he named me Vivi, which didn't sit well with me at first. As I watched him play though, there were a few scenes of Vivi just unleashing absolute hell, and it kind of blew my mind. In a way, it showed me that the small guy can still surprise, that the small guy is not just the weak guy. It felt good seeing something like that. It gave me a healthier perspective on myself at a young age, so I've always had a close connection with him. As for the worst protagonists, Core Meteor from Tales of Hearts R comes immediately to mind. This is just a shallow spitfuck of a character, full of piss and vinegar but no real relatable, believable sense of motivation or backstory. Half the time when he opens his mouth, it's a bad thing, and the other half, it's an absolutely awful thing, as he sports one of the worst catchphrases I've ever heard from a character in a JRPG. Don't get me wrong though, as unpopular as this is, I actually liked Tales of Hearts R. The combat system is fun as hell and the journey is simple, yet inoffensive enough that I enjoyed my time with it. But I could not stand Boar Meteor. But for now, that's where I'm leaving this. Hopefully the next Tark Talks will be a little more concise, but yeah, I definitely had a lot to juggle this time around. But if you like the video, you guys know the deal. Like, comment, subscribe, and share the video if you can. If you really like the content, don't consider supporting the show on Patreon. And as always, folks, thanks for watching.